Hey guys, in this lesson we'll talk about what's inside of your computer. Now, if you already have some basic understanding of the different components and how they work, feel free to ignore this lesson. But I'm sure that if you do watch it, there's still a couple pointers that you can pick up. So check this out. Everything inside of your computer looks into one big circuit board, right? That circuit board is called the motherboard. Now, servers, desktop computers, laptops, they all have a motherboard. It may look a little different, but they all have it. So the motherboard is a focal point for everything that happens inside the computer. So what do we have on the motherboard? Of course, we have our CPU. This is the processing unit of the computer. This is what actually does and performs all the number crunching and all the data manipulation up inside the computer. This defines how fast you can process data. Then we also have some memory modules. Now, computer memory is important because when you turn the computer on and you start running different applications, the applications need a place to store their data while it's running, and that is what memory is used for. So if your computer is running slowly, it may be because you don't have enough memory. All these things are very easy to check, and I will show you how to do that down the road. Now, we also have several connecting ports on the motherboard. We're not going to go through the different types and what they do, but they all plug in to external components to the motherboard, such as your hard drive. Now, a hard drive is a very important component. The hard drive is the part of the computer that stores all your files. So when you go to email and your buddy sends you a file and you store it on your computer, it's actually being stored on a hard drive. Now, this is permanent storage, right? So when the computer is restarted, you still have all your files. Unlike memory, which goes away as soon as you restart the computer. Now, let's talk about some of the other things that plug into the motherboard. You'll also have another set of these ports for other peripherals. Peripherals are basically other stuff that you can plug into your computer, right? The most common one would be like a DVD drive or a CD drive if you're old school. Let's call it CD, DVD. That's pretty straightforward. I don't really need to explain it. You put a disk in it, it spins, and the device is able to read data, and you can use it in your computer. Now, the motherboard also has several other components. For example, there are usually several expansion slots. And this is not drawn to scale, by the way, by any means. The expansion slot allows you to plug in additional modules inside of your computer to expand functionality. For example, if you're a gamer, you're familiar with the process of upgrading your video card to support the latest graphics. These ones, if this is a desktop computer, these modules get plugged into the back, and they would have several ports sticking out the back that you can plug stuff into. Now, some of these expansion ports are actually, well, not expansion ports, but the stuff that you usually put in them are built into the motherboard, right? For example, when these guys were making computers, they realized that probably not everybody's going to want to go out and buy a video card for their computer to support. And since everybody's going to need one, we might as well just put it on the motherboard. So they would create these ports on the motherboard, right? Like the VGA port. Now this port is what gets hooked up to your monitor so you can see what's going on your computer. Kind of important. Another important port is the network port. RJ45, that's the name of the plug. Now the network port, as I'm sure you're familiar with, it allows your computer to connect over the network. Now the actual device that provides the network port is called a network interface card, and you can abbreviate it to NIC, NIC. Now please don't be one of these people that says NIC card. If you do say that, I will find you and I will correct it. Because saying NIC card is actually saying network interface card. And people make this all the time and it drives me crazy. Anyway, let's do a quick review of what we have here on our motherboard. We have a motherboard that hooks up all the components. We have our memory modules. We have our central processing unit. We have our hard drive for storing all of our stuff. We have some expansion ports like the RJ45 network port and the network interface card for network communication. We have some expansion ports. Here we got a VGA port that leads to the monitor. Now, you should be asking yourself something. Well, what powers all this, right? Exactly. There's another component, it's called the power supply. The power supply plugs into the motherboard to power up all the circuitry, right? But then it also plugs into things like your hard drive or your CD-ROM drive. Stuff that does require a lot of power because they do need to spin the disks and the drives. So this is pretty much a basic layout of any computer. These components that we've talked about, you can find them on a laptop, a server, a desktop. So regardless of what kind of system you're working on, all these things will be familiar to you. Now, over the next couple of lessons, we're going to dive in and we're going to examine some of these devices in a little bit more detail.